So last week I took you all into the woods with me and showed you how I shoot, in this example, something like little fern heads that were coming up through the forest floor. Now I thought it would be nice to say, alright, I've brought these photos into Lightroom. What are the next steps? Because just about every photo you see online has been post-processed at least a little bit. So all I've done up to this point is I've imported all of these photos. I have given them 1 star, as in they weren't completely blurry and they're worth at least a second look to see whether or not I want to keep. Right now I'm in the library module where you get to kind of go through and rate, and you can actually rate them in any module, but I'm just going to double click, and so now I'm looking at this first image larger. I'm going to go to the next one. It takes a second to load and see if there's anything different. I like it's a little bit brighter, the second one, even though all of the settings were the same. I think there was clouds in the sun, so I think in this one that's a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 2 stars. I like that one a little bit better. And then I changed the composition a little bit so they weren't so smack dab in the center, but you know what? I don't really like that. In this one I get a little bit closer. Looks like it might be a little soft though. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, actually a lot more. I'm at 1:1, and you can see up here in the thumbnail, I can see the whole bit that I'm looking at. Oh, that is pretty neat there, the way that tiny little fern head turns into a gigantic fern. I guess that's what plants do, they grow up. I think I do like this one. I'm going to give it 2 stars for now. I'm going to move on to the next one. White balance changed a good bit between those two. Look at that, very cool. Much warmer. Just a little bit of sun changing in the camera sensor. The little brain in the camera is fooled just a little bit, and you end up with a very different look. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but just very different. In this one, this closer fiddle head, very fuzzy is the focus. Let's see, it always takes a second. I ask it when I import to do minimal previews, or standard I think, and not full. So when I zoom in it does take a moment to load up. And you know what, that's a little bit soft. I didn't focus so well on that one. I'm going to skip over that one. Here I think I backed it up a little bit more, and let's wait for it to, maybe a little bit. You know what though, I don't really like those too much. Now I think I actually didn't show this, but after I stopped rolling, I shot a portrait orientation, which I kind of liked from the bottom to the top. And I have 2 of these. Let's see if I like one better than the other. Let's go with the first one. And so we'll skip that. And now this is a shot someplace else, different, but I thought I would include it for showing a trick. There's a parking lot right below this little grassy hill, so I was trying to hide that, get low to the ground, and really capture the clouds at the same time. But you can see that it's a little bright up there, so we'll come back and we'll fix that in a second. And then this I just shot recently with the SL1 and the 18-135, which, you know, is a pretty nice lens. Alright, so now I have some that are starred 1 and 2. I'm going to filter out, so just showing me my 2 stars. These are the ones that I want to work on. Oh, and also labeled purple because that's the ones I used for this purpose of this exercise. Alright, so we're now ready to move over to the develop module. And I could have done some of that in the develop module as well. So I've just brought it in. You can see that it's showing the white balance as shot and the tint. And then all of my little sliders are centered at 0 all the way down. Now I was shooting with the 18-55 I think, so I'm going to turn enable profile corrections on. And you know what? It doesn't have this lens in it. Oh, there it goes. It found the old 18-55. It does not yet have in its database the 18-55 STM, but really there's not going to be much change in that regard. So let's turn that off for a second. Do you see how it changed that distortion just a little bit? Shooting at 18, you're getting wider, and you get a little bit of distortion out at the edges. And so it fixes that distortion, brightens a little bit of vignetting. And you know, honestly, this isn't the greatest picture, but this is fine for showing what I would do to it. So the next thing that I would do to this is I would add a little bit of clarity. It's an easy, cheap way to just give, I want to call it sharpness, because that is similar to what clarity is doing. You do have the sharpness sliders down here in detail as well. I usually don't do a whole lot with those. Mostly because I have not a lot of experience using it, and I am happy with what the clarity slider provides me. I'm going to lower the blacks a little bit, a little more contrasty there. And the whites I'll bring up just a tiny bit. And you can hit the backslash key on your keyboard to do a before and after, before, after, before, after. Pretty subtle changes. And I think that's personally what I like for this. Let's look a little bit though at this green and up the saturation of the green just a little bit so those guys stand out. And you could also change them color quite a bit. Go from some kind of gross Dr. Seuss color to some unbelievably silly. So, but do you see how much fine control you have there? I could also go up to vibrance and saturation, but notice how the whole picture starts to take on a tone that is unrealistic. And that is not pleasing to my eye. There are times where that is an interesting effect, but I prefer a little bit subtler, more subtle, and just coloring or just bringing up the saturation of the color you're interested in is better. So I like this, but you know what? I'm distracted by this bit of other fiddleheads coming up in the background here, so I'm going to go to my crop tool, and I have the lock down, which will keep the aspect ratio in check, and I'm just going to crop those out and come in a little bit closer. So I'm happy enough with that. We added a little bit of clarity, a little bit of vibrance, saturation, brought the blacks down, whites up, and increased the saturation just a little bit. We move to the next image, and I could hit previous down here, and I'll go ahead and do that, and it's going to take all of the changes that I did on the first and apply it here, even the cropping. So I could hit this crop button and then hit reset so that the cropping would go away. And you know what? I think I'm happy with that. So it brought over, notice we have our saturation and our hue, green, set the same way. Our whites, our blacks, and our clarity are all set exactly the same as the first one we worked on. I can go to the third image now, and again hit previous, and it takes all of the settings of the previous image. No change in crop now because the previous image I had not cropped, or I undid the crop, and so it didn't have that applied to it, and all of these other changes. In this case, this green is starting to look a little unrealistic to me, so I'm going to back it off just a little bit, but maybe bring up the clarity just a little bit more. And check. Obviously the profile corrections come over as well. Let's move over to the next image. And real quick, the first thing I'm going to do here is I love this tool for when your skies are a little bit blown out, or if one half of your image is one way or another. This is the gradient tool. I'm going to click up in the top of the sky and drag down. And you don't really see a change, but now I have a gradient across that I can affect, and I can start to drop that exposure, and notice that it's just the top and not the bottom that's being affected by this, because it's a gradient, and down here at the bottom of the image the gradient is basically off, and up at the top it is on. And so when I change, and I'm going to really increase my contrast to kind of bring out those clouds. And let's see what shadows does. Let's just play with these and see. Oh, I like shadows down a little bit, and saturation, I think maybe right about there. And I could even move this whole gradient down some too, because we do have clouds further down the page. There we go. And I'm going to close that, and let's hit our slash key. So that was before, that's after, before, after. And again, we've got a lot of green down here at the bottom. Let's green it up a little bit. Let's be ridiculous. There it is, really high. And look at that. Not too much. Back down somewhere around there. And luminance is the kind of brightness values of those, so you could bring them way down or way up as well, I think. Whoa. I think right about there is good. And we got this pesky light pole over here. So we're in Lightroom 4. Lightroom 5 would be able to deal with this better, but we do have this clone tool. I can come over here. I can make it bigger using my bracket keys. And we can see, I'm going to grab that. And now I'm going to move this down, 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 down a little bit more. There we go. Say done. and our pesky light pole is gone. So slash, 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 or I should say before, after, before, after. All right. And let's add just a little bit of clarity to the whole image now. And so just a little bit of clarity, and I'm happy with that. Finally, this dandelion seed head. I'm pretty happy with the way this came out. I could have even shot it maybe at a little bit of a deeper depth of field, but I'm just going to increase the clarity on this. And I think I'm happy with, well, let's bring up the highlights a little bit and see if we can make that white really just kind of pop a little bit more than it already does. And maybe crop it just a tiny bit in from the right, because it feels like there's a little bit, I do kind of want this to be smack dab. No, I think it was, well, maybe right about there. I just wanted that to be smack dab in the center. Now, I don't know if I'm going to play around with the green down here. I could bring it up a little bit. It's already so nicely blurred in the background. Maybe brighten it or darken it a little bit. Yeah, I think that's good. So now what would I do? I want to share these on Facebook. I want to show my friends my wonderful, beautiful photos. So I'm going to highlight these photos. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Export. Let me show you real quick though. I've set up some presets. One for a cover photo, one for when I'm posting videos or images into videos, one for my Smug Mug, and then RAWs for my Smug Vault and Facebook size images. But I'm just going to say export to walk you through my settings. So export to, choose folder for later for presets. This looks complicated, but once you set them up and you can save these presets as you saw that I've done, you really just hit a button and you get your JPEGs out and you do something with them. Lightroom also has a variety of ways to just publish directly to various sources, including Facebook, including blogs, including Zenfolio, SmugMug, all of those. We'll talk about those in the future. Export to, that's going to allow me to choose every time where I want to export them to, and I think that's fine. Down here, image format, JPEG, because we want them to be shared. Quality, I usually put around 90. You don't need to go higher than 90, especially if you're just sharing to Facebook, someplace like that. Resize to fit. 2400 by 2400. I've recently heard that that is the sweet spot for Facebook images. Below that, and Facebook thinks you don't care a whole lot about how they look and will compress them some more. Above that, and Facebook needs to compress them to keep their databases or their storage on the smaller side. Resolution, it doesn't really matter. About 200 is fine. You could go as low as 112. Sharpen, I don't need to sharpen anymore because I was adding some clarity to it, and the rest of these I'm just going to leave as is and hit the export button. It's going to say, where do you want these to go? And I'm just going to make a new folder real quick and say, my beautiful photos on the desktop, open, and now it's going to start processing and exporting these 5 files, and it should do it fairly quickly. I'm asking my computer to do some other things at the same time, so it may take just a little bit longer. And then you have these gorgeous images that are ready to upload somewhere. Maybe 5 minutes later, an hour later, somebody says, oh, I'd love to see that dandelion picture as a black and white. It's so easy to do. Or maybe the sky picture. Let's see how the sky picture will look black and white. All of those changes we made back in Lightroom are non-destructive changes. They have not actually changed the image. When we export, we get that look, but back in the program of Lightroom, it's just sitting here waiting for us to change again. We could just simply hit this black and white button, and we get black and whites. I really like to see the contrast much higher, and then I'll take this gradient. Let's put another gradient on top here, and bring down the exposure. There we go. And now we're starting to see some excitement up there in the sky above and really see those clouds. And again, 5 minutes later you decide that you don't like the black and white. Well, you can come back in here and go back to color and come back to that at any time. Now it's starting to look a little funny, a little too played with. So that was just making some quick edits in Lightroom and then exporting out to save those or to share those someplace. And if I go now to my desktop and my beautiful photos, here they are. They're nice file size, 1 megabyte, under 1 megabyte, and that is a good bit more manageable than the 16 or 20 megabytes that they were as RAW files. So I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, comments, concerns, leave a comment down below or find me over on Facebook. If you have requests for future videos, again, just give me a shout. I'm happy to do that. Thanks for watching.